It seems as though Texas is in another energy crisis, especially since we're being asked to conserve energy as the heat goes up. So what's really going on, and are there solutions? It's time for some straight talk. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is The Bunker Bob Show. Greetings, thrill seekers, music lovers, conversationalists from across the fruited plains of the great state of Texas. I am your host, Bunker Bob Steinhagen, bringing you an hour of unfiltered, unadulterated, and unapologetic conservatism to help make Texas and America great again. And I'm grateful to have you watching today on the Bunker Cam via Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook. And welcome my podcast listeners who are out walking, driving in their cars, or wherever they are listening via Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. Well, today I'm focusing on what's going on in with our power grid. As many of you are well aware, we have been asked to conserve energy as the heat continues to go up, and the heat in Texas has been frankly unbearable. I don't think that I'm the only one who would say that, and I was going to talk about water as well, but I think I'm going to keep my powder dry on that today. I'm going to focus instead specifically on ERCOT, on the power grid, and what is going on with that, because I want to dedicate a whole show to water in the great state of Texas, because there are some out there saying we don't have a water problem. There is no water problem in Texas. All you have to do is drill a well. There's actually a developer out there, Philip Huffines, one of, in my opinion, a guy who is absolutely dishonest as the day is long, and who has absolutely no problem violating Texas state law to get his developments moved forward. He is, and so I'm going to be focusing on that whole thing and what's going on in Texas and people like Huffines, and I'm talking about Philip Huffines, not Don Huffines, but Philip Huffines, who is in my opinion, a very unscrupulous developer. But when it comes to the power grid, we all recall what happened in 2021, when the power grid almost failed, I should say. It didn't fail, it almost did. And that was a wake-up call for everyone in the state of Texas. And most of us felt as though there were some issues that should have been addressed sooner, and many in the state capital agree. State Senator Bob Hall has made energy and power and what's going on with the electric grid a priority for him, and to get to the bottom of this so that we can solve the energy problems that we're facing. Well, as the heat continues to rise, last week the ERCOT sent out a notice asking citizens to conserve energy, to raise their consumption, or raise the temperatures on the air conditionings. And especially in certain hours of the day when demand is highest. And it really kind of begged the question, well, why did that happen? Because it really didn't make a lot of sense, frankly, because after all, Texas, and we have to remember, Texas is energy. Is loaded with energy. We have natural gas, we have oil and gas, more than most states, and we are not necessarily utilizing those resources. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, I'm going to tell you right now that that is Current Revolt. I'm going to use Current Revolt as a resource that I use when along with others that I'll use, and I'll be referencing different sources throughout this show. But when it comes to, and Current Revolt basically highlighted one of the biggest issues going on that a lot of, and as I read through and as I looked at a lot of what was being said and what was coming out, I noticed one common denominator, and that was that there was kind of a dismissal of what I think Current Revolt did a good job of, specifically Tommy Oliver of Current Revolt. I thought he did a good job of highlighting the real problem that exists in the state. And it's important for all of us to understand where exactly it is that we get our energy. And this is how Texas generates its electricity. For those of you who are watching on the Bunker Cam, you can see this graph. Those of you who are on the listening to the podcast, I'll explain what this graph shows. Now, this is from ERCOT, and this graph shows how Texas generates its electricity. So I'm just curious, if you are not watching the Bunker Cam right now, and you're a podcaster, or you're listening to the podcast, think to yourself, what percent? So I'm going to throw out, there is solar, nuclear, coal, wind, and natural gas. Those are the primary sources of energy here in Texas. What do you think the main source of electricity is in Texas? If you said natural gas, you're right. 46% of that is natural gas. What do you think the next primary source is? 23%. Well, if you said nuclear, which is what I believed, frankly, I did. I thought for sure nuclear would be at least 25% of our consumption and where we would get our energy. Comanche Peak, for instance, has a nuclear plant, and I actually worked with someone who used to work for the Comanche Peak nuclear site. But that's not the case. In fact, nuclear only makes up 11%. If you said coal, which I guess would be my next go-to, I would have thought more 25% or 20% would have been coal. Well, it's 18% is coal, but 23% of the energy comes from wind. Comes from wind energy. Those unsightly windmills that when you travel through certain parts of Texas, especially in Oklahoma, and you know, I had a client in Los Angeles, or excuse me, in Orange County, California, in Thousand Oaks, California. I think I was going from Orange County to Palm Springs. I had to drive to meet a client in Palm Springs, and as I drove through from Orange County to Palm Springs, it was a beautiful drive until, I don't know, about 30 minutes outside of Orange County. I started hitting windmill farms, and the drive just took on a surreal experience for me. I was not prepared for what I saw. The beautiful California desert area where Palm Springs is located. I just could not believe the amount of windmills. Now, this is before Texas got into the windmill game, and it was about 15 years ago that Texas started doing something called competitive renewable energy zones. At the time, this is where we see all of these wind farms start cropping up, and there are federal benefits, tax benefits to it. There are incentives for farmers who use their land for wind energy, and people are taking advantage of that. And so when we see the statistic, or when we see what ERCOT gives us as 23% of our energy coming from wind, that is a little disconcerting. And so, but it is the reason why we started seeing our state in need of energy, or we needed to see the people of the great state of Texas start to use less, to start to conserve energy. And so again, going back to the current revolt, to Tommy Oliver's report, he highlighted something I thought was really brilliant. He basically on August 24th, 2023, on August 24th, he went and looked at the fuel mix from, and this is, by the way, on the 24th, this is when we were asked to start conserving. That was one of the days that we were asked to conserve. So if you're not, again, if you're looking at the bunker cam, you're able to see the illustration that I've got up here. These are the fuel mix things that came up, and that he highlighted. And what you're looking at is from 2:34 p.m. a snapshot of 2:34 p.m. and 6:24 p.m. So 4 hours apart. And so what you're seeing, if you're looking at this on the bunker cam, you're kind of looking at the current generation. So if you're seeing hydro, now what I have done is I have blacked out wind and solar energy as sources. For a reason, because I want to look first at when you compare those two time zones, those two 4 hours apart, 2:34 and 6:24. You see that when you look at the consumption of nuclear, it's pretty much maxed out from 2:34 and 6:24. Coal and lignite is also pretty much close to being maxed out, both at 11,000 megawatts. Natural gas is maxed out, and then other power sources as well. So you don't see a big deviation in any of those. So I've got the nuclear, the coal, the natural gas, and then of course the other. But when you look at the wind and solar, this is where you see the problem. So at 2:34, solar was providing 12,000 megawatts, or 14.6% of the capacity. Wind was providing 6,400 megawatts, or 7.7%. But when you got to 6:24 in the evening, solar went down to 8,500 megawatts, roughly, or 10.5%, and wind diminished to 59 or 6,000 megawatts from 6,400 megawatts. So essentially, what happens is this power source, wind energy, is dependent on wind, right? If it's not windy, then you don't have your power. And solar is very similar. If it's not sunny, you don't have power. Solar only accounts for 2% of the energy sources. However, when I've read through I read through a Washington Post article and a D Magazine article, among others, and Washington Post is really kind of pushing for the idea of moving toward solar energy. And the problem with solar energy is it is a finite resource. These solar panels, they last, they diminish over time. So the time that they're usable is a finite amount of years, and it's problematic to begin with. The problem that ultimately that Oliver with Current Revolt has is that we have been focusing on the wrong thing, and I would agree. We're focusing on wind energy and solar energy rather than the energy and the resources that we have that's natural to the great state of Texas. And so when we do that, we're basically cutting our nose off to spite our face. We have the energy in the ground, and we can do more with natural gas, for instance, and oil, but we're not. And so this is where the frustration lies. We keep building more and more wind farms in hopes that is going to sustain us. The problem is wind farms don't sustain us when the wind ain't blowing. And solar panels don't work, but I think the lifespan is 20 to 25 years. And then you have a lot of material that you have to dispose of. So the cost of solar versus the output is often not as great as people think. And this is the big problem that a lot of conservatives have ultimately is, we should be we should be good to our environment. We do need to, Republicans were the first environmentalists. Teddy Roosevelt it's why we have national parks today. Because Republicans believe and still believe that conserving our natural resources is important. But we do have other options out there. I'm a nuclear guy. I like nuclear energy, and even though mishaps have occurred over time, the fact of the matter is nuclear energy is probably one of the best resources that we could have in Texas. Of course, the federal government doesn't allow it anymore. And so we've been kind of hogtied on that. We're not using our natural resource the way we should. But the bigger issue for Texas is we've got a huge migration of people coming in from all over the United States of America. Why? Because we're a community, a state that has low taxes. We uphold the rights of individuals for the most part, and we are really an opportunity to you can buy a lot of property for a little bit of land comparatively, and so people want to live freely. They want to be in states where they're not overregulated, and they want to be able to afford housing. And Texas is a great resource, is a great place for that. So with that comes the challenge. And the challenge is obvious. With more people come more electrical need. Now, Texas is unique, and I think that a lot of people are not aware of the fact that Texas that the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, is the grid operator, and it serves about 90% of the state's electricity needs and has very few high voltage transmission lines connecting to nearby grids. It's a deliberate move to avoid federal oversight of the power market. And that means that Texas has to be mainly self-reliant and cannot depend on neighbors or neighboring states during extreme conditions like we're seeing now. And And so, the Washington Post states that that vulnerability is a dramatic twist for a state that's also the energy capital of the U.S., thanks to vast oil and natural gas producing fields. And obviously, the highlight of favorable regulations on wind and solar are driving Texans to, especially Texas landowners, to move in that direction because it's cost effective for them. They're able to get some great perks from that and using their land. Now, the jump in demand comes as the state becomes more dependent. Even the Washington Post agrees that it has become more independent on intermittent renewable power sources, raising concerns among some critics that more reliance on wind and solar will leave the grid more vulnerable to disruption, and it will. There's no question about it. Now, this is the problem that Texas faces is we have to make decisions and we have to provide enough electricity for all of the people who are coming in. Now, because Texas doesn't, Texas is kind of a free market energy state. What that means is when it comes to electricity, the cost of electricity rises and falls with demand. So in 1 month or quarter, you're going to see your energy bill fluctuate. The cost of electricity fluctuates. There is no standard of that. However, after the snowmageddon that we all lived through, there is a cap. The price cap for electricity was cut from 9,000 per megawatt hour to 5,000 to help avoid the punitive cost seen in that 2021 storm. But that doesn't mean that prices are allowed to spike more easily. And so this is one of the issues. And I think that citizens who have to pay you have to pay an electric bill 1 month that is so much per megawatt hour, and then it rises. That's problematic for many Texans. But that is the law of supply and demand. And so the natural answer to our energy issue is, if you want to pay less, then use less. If you want to use more, if you want to pay more, then use more. ERCOT is working on this, but again, the number of wind farms is just going up and up and up, and that is the ultimate problem. What we're trying to do, or what is happening here in the. So, how do we solve these problems? Understand that these wind farms and the solar farms, these things are a temporary solution to a long-term problem that is going to continue to get even worse if we're not willing as a state to start making some harder choices and to use our own energy reserves, our own energy resources. But the problem that we're seeing again is the that we're getting from the state of Texas, excuse me, from Washington D.C., and that's really where a lot of this problem is going to continue to happen. So long as, for instance, they're giving incentives for people to put solar on their homes, and so as you see these incentives continue, making solar panels, putting solar panels on your home less expensive. 20 years from now, those solar panels are going to be not near as efficient as they were when you put them in. And eventually, those solar panels will be useless. When when that happens, what is going to be the solution for individuals? I am not opposed to using less energy as a people, but ultimately our job is, or our expectation as citizens should be going to have the state legislature is going to and fix these problems, that ERCOT is going to fix these problems. Now, a lot of people are saying, hey, well, we need to move into the 21st or the next. We need to become part of the national solution and join the national grid. We don't need to be independent. The problem is, if we were to join in and join the federal program, then our problems that we're seeing today will not get better. They will only get worse. So what I really think is we need to look at is the fact that we are still energy independent of ourselves. So we have ERCOT. We have the ability to make decisions for ourselves without the insistence on the federal government telling us what we can and cannot do. If we went into the federal program, we would essentially be giving up our autonomy, and we would be obligated to use energy, find energy solutions that are in contradiction to efficient energy. Efficient energy. I go back to the issue of nuclear and oil and gas. Obviously, the Biden administration is trying to push everybody to electric vehicles, and excuse me, those electric vehicles. I was just looking at I was somewhere where a Mercedes, one of the electric Mercedes Benz, the first one I'd seen, and it's a pretty amazing looking car. But somebody who I was talking with, and we were both looking at it, he said, it just doesn't make sense, these electric vehicles, because you can only drive so far, and then you have to stop for so long to get recharged. You can't take long trips. Now, where I in the Rockwall County area of Texas, we are a suburb of Dallas, and so when you have to travel my daughter is in cross country right now, so we're traveling all over creation to her cross country meets. And when you think about how far we have to go, I try to calculate, could we do it with an electric vehicle? And the answer is we might be able to, but for how long? Because the batteries eventually diminish and become obsolete. So the lifespan of a Tesla is finite, obviously, just like any other car, but for different reasons. So I drive Chevy pickup truck, and I think right now it has it's 200,000 miles on it almost, and I suspect and I expect to drive it another 200 more. And I'm one of those people who buys my vehicle new, and I drive it for 10 years, and it's already been 10 years, but I drive it for a minimum of 10 years, if not 20 years. And that's what I try to do, because we pay cash for everything. We're completely debt free. We own our house, right? All of these things, because we believe in being good stewards of the money that God gives us. And so we don't go out and buy cars left and right, for instance. And if we had a Tesla, it doesn't economically, it doesn't make much sense at all to do something like that. Now, for those of you who do have the Teslas, great. I think it's fine, but I don't know that it's going to be a good long-term solution for most people. And I think that the whole the idea of electric cars and things like that is I don't think it's necessarily going away, but for the federal government to demand that all cars be electric by a certain date is, to me, the acme of absolute foolishness. So when we think about it in those terms, when we think about the fact that vehicles, as they are now, if we had to go all electric, where is that energy that powers those cars? Where does that come from? Well, it comes from the coal plants, or in Texas, it comes from natural gas, and it is coming from wind, from coal, but it comes from a power source. And so is it really as economical as, and is it really saving the environment? The fact of the matter, we've got all of these wind turbines all over, wind farms all over the United States, and environmentalist wackos continue to say that we are in crisis. Well, wait a minute. We've done a major shift. If you look at the state of Texas and you look at the percent that the state of Texas gets energy from wind, the state of Texas should, just by the mere fact that we have diminished our dependence, if you will, on these fossil fuels, well, we should be much cooler. The wind should be, the earth should be cooling, because the United States is a good steward of the environment. We have so many regulations that tell us what we can and cannot do with energy. For instance, incandescent bulbs. You can't find an incandescent bulb today. It's about right impossible to find one. Why? Because they've been pushed out of the market. The federal government has put an end to them, and so now they're all LED. Well, that's a good thing in a lot of ways, because it is saving energy. They're better. They're more efficient. Light bulbs, and so we've been good stewards of the environment. But it was the market, in my opinion, that drove the LED fad. It's not a fad, or the way our light bulbs work today. I, as a homeowner, when we bought the house that we're in today, one of the first things I did was change everything to LED. It was expensive to do that on the front end, but on the back end, we saved money on energy, on the long-term energy. But more importantly, for me, it was a matter of heat. The incandescent bulbs put out so much heat, and the LED did not, so it saved me energy on that end. So, for instance, I have a studio here. This studio, the bunker, is inside this house, my house. And all of my studio lights are LED. It's because it's cooler to do it that way, and in the end it is more efficient. So that's the market driving us toward LEDs, and manufacturers of incandescent light bulbs. And some people still like the incandescents. They are still selling them, but they're selling them as heat modules or heat producers. So, and it's funny because at our house where we used to live in White Rock Lake area of the Dallas Metroplex, I had an electric gate, an automatic gate put in at the front of my property. Well, when it got really, really cold, the circuit board on that would not work. And so I put in a shop light with a 100-watt incandescent bulb, and I put that inside the box where the mechanisms were, where the computer chips were, and that warmed it up enough that it would work. So during winter, I would have that incandescent bulb heating that area up. So the point is, if we're going to be good stewards of the environment, let's do it with the thought of what makes sense. LED do make sense. They are more expensive, but people will pay more for something if in the end it's a better product and it will provide a better end result. The LEDs are also now most of them are you can adjust the brightness, you can adjust the lumens that are put off, the color of the light. So there's a lot of benefit to the LEDs, and they last a significant amount of time. I think we've been in this house for well over 10 years now, and I haven't changed bulbs. I think I've changed a couple of the smaller light bulbs, but ultimately, it has produced a better result for me as a homeowner, and so that's why I put LEDs in. So the fact of the matter, more homeowners all over the state of Texas are doing what I've done, putting in LED light bulbs in their homes, and which means the demand that they're using a fraction of the energy that they used to use when they had incandescent lights. The efficiency, I just purchased, we just put in a new pool pump. I redid the entire pool pump structure, and one of the offerings was a pump that was a variable speed pump, so it was more energy efficient. I chose that not because I thought, well, I'm just going to be a great steward of the environment. I did it because it would, in the long run, it would lower my energy cost. And that's an incentive for what we're doing. And that, I think, is the biggest reason that the federal government does such a terrible job at things. It kind of pushes things into down our throat from a moralistic point of view. The free market does a better job of pushing energy efficiency because it focuses on what's most important to consumers, and that's the bottom line. That's the cost, the long-term cost of using a product, and the longevity of a product, the quality of a product. So those are the good things that we're seeing. But that also has some bad things that come with that. If you look at dishwashers, I think this is one thing that Donald Trump highlighted in the campaign when he first ran against Hillary Clinton, and of course we all know because this is since this show is also on YouTube. I can say that the election was stolen, and what election I'm talking about, of course, is the election when Hillary Clinton lost and Donald Trump won. Now that election, according to YouTubers and the left, that election was stolen. So it's okay to talk about that election and it being stolen. Well, that's the election when where Donald Trump went to on the campaign trail, and he talked about the inefficiency of dishwashers today. That it takes 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours to run a new dishwasher. And if you've got a new dishwasher, you know what I'm talking about. And it's far less efficient. It uses less water, for sure. Yes, it uses less water, but it doesn't get the dishes nearly as clean as the old standard dishwashers. And so what do? You wash the dishes, you pre-wash the dishes. I use a lot more water pre-washing my dishes than the dishwasher, than the previous dishwashers, where you could just throw the dishes in, you could let them dry overnight, and all that the baked on stuff that was on the dishes, they could stay overnight, and the next day in an hour the dishes would be clean. Why? Because those dishwashers, yes, they were less efficient when it came to water, but it was actually more efficient because you didn't have to pre-wash your dishes. Now you have to pre-wash your dishes, even though many of them say, "Oh, you don't have to pre-wash your dishes." I challenge you. If you've got one of these new dishwashers, and I do. If you've got one of these dishwashers, I challenge you to to make some spaghetti, let it dry. Let it just sit there. Put it in the dishwasher after you've finished. Don't wash it. Put it in the dishwasher. Let it sit there overnight, and then run the dishwasher the next day, and run it like I do on the pots and pan cycle. I run it on the hottest cycle, the one that's going to go the longest. I run everything on pots and pan cycle. Okay. And I've experimented over time. I've tried different cycles. I've tried the smart cycle. The smart cycle is the one that kind of determines what you need to, how you need to these dishes need to be washed, and it'll figure out, because it's a smart cycle. It'll figure out when they're clean. It's not true. They don't work. So try it on the pots and pan cycle. Try it on whichever cycle you want to. But when you pull those things out, look at your forks. Look at your dishes. We use bowls typically. The big bowls for spaghetti at our house, and they don't come clean. You have to pre-wash. But this is the push for energy efficiency. And so rather than thinking, okay, what is going to be most appealing to the free market? What would people buy into as a dishwasher? What are some of the solutions that we could make? And if those who were all the environmental wackos in the federal government who passed these laws, and I'm speaking of Republicans as well, who agree with many of this nonsense, when you regulate industry, when you regulate the free market, you basically undermine innovation and you prevent efficiency. You limit efficiencies. And so the efficiencies that you might get if the free market were left to its own devices, which it would have. The free market can figure out better than any government program or well-intentioned government bureaucrat what is going to work best for the consumer, and in the end, what will use and less energy, conserve energy, and be a better steward of the environment. Look, the fact of the matter is, most manufacturers would do anything as far if it made sense, if it made them more money, they'll do it. If being a good on the environment, helping the environment, being more efficient works best for their product, they're gonna do it. They're gonna make those changes. It reminds me of the buggy whip. There was obviously the companies that made buggy whips, and there were those companies were outstanding. There was one company that was better than any other at making the buggy whip. But as cars came into the fray and people started moving away from horses to automobiles, the buggy whip business kind of went out of business because the demand had been lowered. And so those who made buggy whips had to change. They either had to adapt to the changing environment, which many did. They manufactured other things, oftentimes in the automobile industry, or they went bankrupt and they went under. That is the market pushing forward, and that is the market determining the outcome. When government comes in and says, we're going to say no more buggy whips. We don't want to see any more buggy whips because horses are a scourge on the environment. They are hard on roads, or whatever the government would want to say. If they came in and said no more buggy whips, it would have been detrimental to those companies. They would have all gone under rather than been able to adapt to the changing environment. Government, it is amazing to me how few in government, how few elected officials have ever signed the front of a paycheck. Because they've never built anything, they've never made anything. They have been community organizers, and they've gotten people politically involved, but they've never actually made anything. They've never actually had employees work for them, and they've never had to compete in the open market. And so this is why we see a president like Joe Biden in the Oval Office, who has spent his entire life in public service, if you want to call it that, in politics. And basically, Joe Biden is very, very generous with taxpayer money, but when it comes to his own money, he's incredibly selfish. That is also typical with when it comes to Joe Biden. Now, I will say that lawmakers in Texas have passed a $10 billion program providing low-interest loans and grants to build new gas-fired plants, and that is something that is going to go before voters. So this is, again, so it is interesting. As a conservative, I don't believe that government should ever be involved in the free market, and that's what's happened with the solar industry. The government, the federal government, has become a resource for solar energy companies, and many of which received billions of dollars in federal subsidies and have now gone out of business. I'm all for tax incentives. I'm all for giving companies tax breaks to do things, but I am not a big fan of giving money to the private to private businesses, even those that I fully and wholeheartedly support. Now, I think what is happening here is the reason this is necessary and the state legislature sees this as necessary is because more and more companies are gravitating toward the federal funding that they get by doing all of this nonsense, this unreliable energy, participating in unreliable energy. And so fewer companies want to take the risk of getting into things like gas-fired plants, and it is a risk. And so this is what this is what the state of Texas is trying to do. Again, I'm not a fan of, and I'm not a supporter of private companies receiving taxpayer dollars ever. I'm not a fan of cities that give huge that pay out huge sums of monies to football stadium owners so that they put their football stadium in their community. But it happens all the time, right? I will say this, that Frisco is probably one of the best cities at creating incentives for companies to come to their city. Now, Frisco, the cost of living in Frisco has skyrocketed, obviously, because the cost of living in Frisco has had to increase because there's more need for government programs or services, I should say. So when people say that if we bring more businesses, I'm saying politicians, when politicians say we need to bring in more businesses so that we can lower the tax rate, that's just a complete lie. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. The state of Texas gave huge incentives to Tesla to come into Austin. And Tesla has come into Austin, and they've got some amazing tax breaks to be there. If you look at Buc-ee's, wherever Buc-ee's is, you can know that Buc-ee's is paying nothing in local sales tax. So you don't see local sales tax on their receipts. Why? Because Buc-ee's goes to cities that want their business. And to give you a great example of that, if you were to look at two cities, Terrell, and I think it's Royce City. It's Royce City. If you look at Terrell and Royce City in Texas, these are two cities that are just that are literally border my city of McLennan Chisholm. Terrell had a vision. They had a plan for how they were going to use Buc-ee's. So the only way Buc-ee's would come in is if they got this this right not to have to pay do sales tax, and they get free from that, and so that they could would be more profitable for Buc-ee's. So that's what Terrell did. And if you go to Terrell today, you will see they put in the Buc-ee's, and they worked with other developers for this massive planned development of businesses. And frankly, they've knocked it out of the park. The city of Terrell has literally knocked it out of the park. There are every kind of business that you would imagine, from Hobby Lobby to Whataburger to what have you. They've got it all in Terrell. Go to Royce City and look at their Buc-ee's, and look at everything that's around the Buc-ee's, and you will find nothing. Why? Because the leaders at the time, the mayor and city council back then, not true now, but back then were people who just said, well, yeah, we'll just allow all of this to happen without any plan at all. And this is oftentimes what happens. If you have a good visionary and you have a community that is bought in. Terrell was sucking wind, and Terrell needed something to revitalize the city, because the city, it's very much like McLennan Chisholm. The city at one time, they started just to build and grow their government, grow the size of government, big. Well, eventually they couldn't sustain the government, and the cost of living was just became too high. So they needed to inject something. They needed something. The problem, and it's very much like my little community of McLennan Chisholm. McLennan Chisholm, they're wanting to do all of these things too, but they have absolutely no plan. They have no idea what they're going to do from now. They have no 20-year plan. They have no 10-year plan. They have no 5-year plan. There's no economic development that explains to citizens, here's why these things are good. But they do want to see bigger government, and that is their solution. This is the mindset of people who are in office that have never signed the front of a paycheck. And rather than making our little communities, McLennan Chisholm, an exclusive community where you have these large lot homes, and basically becomes kind of an oasis from other surrounding cities, we could have been. That's what we could have been, but we're not going to ever be that way, because the city of McLennan Chisholm is led by individuals who have absolutely no concept what it means to sign the front of a paycheck. They have no regard for long-term planning and smart planning. They just let the developers do whatever the hell they want to do. The developer tells them one thing, they say, oh, okay, we don't know what we're doing. They don't know what they're doing. It is a complete boondoggle. And energy goes into that as well in our little city of McLennan Chisholm when it comes to water, and I'll be talking about that tomorrow. And what a disaster that is moving into. It is a complete farce what is being proposed in McLennan Chisholm. And Rockwall County is, I'm digressing. I'm moving off onto a rabbit trail, and we're almost out of time. But ultimately, the reason it takes so long to fix what's going on with the electric grid is, figuring out, how to keep the lights on without overburdening customers is the challenge, especially when, you have weather conditions that are fluctuating. Now, some people would argue, well, this is a clear fact of climate change, evidence of climate change. And the fact of the matter is, it was 10 years ago when we moved into the Rockwall area, you actually saw a drought condition that we have today, much hotter temperatures than we have today. And in fact, in Lake Ray Hubbard, which is right alongside Rockwall, Lake Ray Hubbard was down so far at the harbor which is where a development of businesses, kind of a strip mall, outdoor strip mall type things. That harbor where boats would come up, and they would go out and they would have lunch or shop or whatever. That harbor was inaccessible because the water was so low that boats could not get in. Now, if you look at the harbor today, the level of Lake Ray Hubbard has not changed 1 inch. But that is not because we're not in a drought. It's specifically because they're building bridges. They're building a new road, bridges over Lake Ray Hubbard, and they have to keep the water level at a constant so that for the construction barges. So that's not so. In case you're wondering, and in case you live in the Rockwall area and couldn't figure out why we're not seeing our lake go down, well, it's real simple, because they have to. They have to keep it that way. So they're flooding. They're bringing in more and more water into our lake because of this state road construction that is going on and is going to go on for the next couple of years. So as far as our lake goes, it's going to continue to be high. Once that bridge is finished, we're going to see fluctuations in it over the years as it gets hotter and as it gets colder, and as we get more water and as we get less. The climate change, this whole idea of climate change is true, that the climate does change, but we are not in some kind of climate change crisis. And that's not the impetus of why ERCOT is not working. The problem is we have chosen for our solution to our energy needs a solution that is temperamental and based upon completely and dependent on the weather. And ironically, the weather, when we have problems like these hot days where no wind is blowing, well, then you're going to obviously have, when you most need energy, you're going to have a major problem in keeping up with the electric demand. So the solution is, I think, and I would agree, the solution is to look at building some more of these gas-fired plants. But is the solution a government handout? And I'm not a big fan of that. I've said that before. There's got to be other ways, and I think that the state would be better served by if the free market doesn't want to invest and does not want to get involved in gas-fired plants and things like that, well, then that may be a situation where it would serve the most people. It serves the most people does the most good for the most people at the least cost. If that may be a situation where you kind of say, well, therein lies the overall trade-off that we're looking for as conservatives. So I think a lot more is going to come out of that, and over the coming months, as the election comes up, citizens are going to have a chance to vote on that, and that's going to allow them to become more informed about what's going on. But ultimately, folks, the reason for our problems with the electric grid has more to do with the source of our power and our dependence on these new forms of energy that are unreliable than it does anything else. And so that's what we have to change. That's what we have to move forward on and come up with better solutions in the long run. I think we will. It will just take time. So I appreciate you being with me today. Tomorrow I'll probably talk about water. Specifically highlight the city of McLennan Chisholm and its asinine ideas behind getting more water. And we'll even hear from Philip Huffines, the developer who says Texas does not have a water problem, and that his new development, if he can just drill water wells, and they'll have as much water as they need. the most asinine, stupid thing ever coming out of someone. He's either stupid or he's lying. And I'll let you be the judge of that. And so that'll be tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much for coming by, and we will see you next time. Blessings.